This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Charles Danius is a retired educator in Illinois, and he's going back to school for his master's. He's also 14 years sober. Charles has shared and inspired others with his story and now shares it with all of us in his book, My Opioid Addiction.
In fact, I'm a mentor and a sponsor to several people, and they seem to have profited from my personal victory. They felt that if I could do it, they could do it. And I thought, I ought to write this story. And so I did. I was stationed in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, 82nd Airborne Unit. First time away from home, I did some things I wasn't very proud of, and it really screwed me up in the head. I self-medicated. I had met what I thought was a beautiful woman, and it turned out that woman was a man. And I had come home from the Army pretty screwed up in the head because I'm not homosexual, and I felt disappointed with myself. And in the 70s, that was a major disappointment for a dude. And I discovered when I took codeine, prescription painkillers, that all the guilt went away. I felt just like I was like anyone else in the world. I just felt like drugs were my savior. And I became dependent on them so that I could function in society. Over the years, it wasn't very easy to get that type of drugs. I would sometimes find a dealer. At other times, I'd have to doctor shop. And even that wasn't always successful because doctors would catch on and not prescribe the drugs. And it was maybe 20 years ago when I was able to get those drugs regularly. I had a back injury, and it was serious, and I was prescribed Vicodin. And so every month I'd get to see the doctor and tell him things were the same, and I'd get a really big jar of Vicodin. And I was abusing those drugs, but I was getting those regularly, and still I would run out and have to buy drugs on the street. It was poison.
You know, when Vicodin came on the market, it was considered the miracle drug. You know, grandmom can get off the couch now and lay on the floor and play with the grandkids, and I just was like, wait a minute, these drugs are opioid based. Poppies. I'm thinking poppies. I'm thinking heroin. I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And if they became so readily available and so many people got addicted, and you're talking 20 years ago when really the pharmaceutical industry was pushing these drugs hard. So how were you able to get yourself out of this?
Oh, yeah, that's true. When I'd go to the doctor, there'd be this poster, doctor's office wall saying you had to give that person painkillers if they said they have, 6 or 7, it went up to 10 level of pain. And when you're taking prescription painkillers, you have that euphoria. And then when you run out, I would not be able to get them from the doctor because my doctor said, you should still have plenty left. And I wouldn't be able to find a dealer. And so an opioid depression is just about the lowest, spiritually, emotionally, physically. A lot of them kill themselves. You just have nothing in you that makes you want to live. No good memories, future events that would normally spark you up, nothing. It's a very bleak, depressing state. And I got to that point where I was driving on the highway and I wanted to get the car up to 100 miles an hour and drive into the concrete embankment. And I told myself, you can do that, it'll be over with. And then I'm a churchgoer, and I thought, well, I can either die or I can start taking church seriously, and I can start being positive addition to this world. And so when I made the decision to not kill myself, then I volunteered at nursing homes. I mentored people who had different types of addictions. I started doing service work. I was able to, with the help of Alcoholics Anonymous and my church and some very loving friends, I was able to get off of those drugs, and it was about 10 days of pure hell. But after that, I actually had more energy, more hope. Yeah, it's amazing. I just got to the fork in the road, live or die, and I decided to live.
How old were you?
I was in my early 50s.
Wow. And this all started when you were a young guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, off and on, I abused drugs from around 1982 right up until about 2007.
Well, that's why your story is such an inspiration because you're proof that you can beat this.
It can be done.
Now, do you go out and talk to, like Alcoholics Anonymous? Do you share your story that way?
In AA, I talk to maybe 20 to 30 people twice a week. And then there's a recovery group at the church that I used to go to, and that's once a week. So I am sharing my story regularly. And on every 6 months, I do talk before a large group. They call that open speaker meeting. So I'm talking to people who are addicts, and I'm talking to friends and families of addicts. And that's a couple of times a year.
Wow. Charles, that's great. You are making the world a better place. Thank you. Kathy Morris Mercer is a retired educator in San Antonio, Texas, whose passion as a reading specialist and wanting kids to be excited about reading, combined with news she's going to have her first grandchild, inspired her to write The Kingdom of Honey.
It is a fairy tale introducing an extravagant kingdom that's thriving with the golden riches of honey provided by an army of honeybees. However, there is a constant threat of bad weather conditions and outside forces that is causing thousands of these precious honeybees to be wiped out. And people are looking for a miracle. You're going to know what the miracle is in the story. It begins in this book, but it doesn't end until the third book. This is a trilogy. So you start finding out in this story how the miracle is going to take place.
And it is true that they are dying, right? We are destroying the honeybees.
Yes.
Is it the power lines or something?
Yes. That is my platform to talk about, yes, bees are dying out because of like you said, the wires and also pesticides and all of that. In the story, it is just outside forces that are jealous of, this kingdom and all the riches that they are getting from the honey and the honeybees.
So are you able to go out and read this story to, other little kids?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been able to go in even to some of the schools and read it. I've been able to teach it, in different areas, different places. Yes.
That's because you're an educator and you're well known in your area, right?
Absolutely. Pretty much.
You are so lucky.
Yes.
Because that's so key.
It is key. Absolutely. And I was able to go back to schools that I had taught in, which was truly a blessing to me.
Does that result in people buying your book?
It does. They are really loving the story. The reviews on Amazon are wonderful. I have 5 stars, and they are really raving about how wonderful the book is and how much there is to learn from this story.
And as a reading specialist, how did you feel about your experience with Paige?
I loved it. First of all, they didn't have to do a whole lot of editing for me because all of us in my home are educators. My husband, my daughters, all of us are educators. And so we are great editors. So by the time I gave my script to them, they didn't have much to do. So I'm sure that made them feel good about my script as well.
And would you say great readers make great writers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Could you give me some encouragement, a message to writers out there who are sitting on the fence going, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can do this.
You have a story. I say to them, you have a story to tell. Write it. Write it. Someone wants to hear it. Someone wants to learn from it. Don't give up. Don't give up. For me, quitting was not an option. I always knew I wanted to write children's stories. I just needed that, continue to get that motivation and inspiration to do so. And like I said, when I found out I was going to have a grandchild, and it was a girl, a granddaughter, it just, that was it. I wanted to leave something for her that she would be proud of, and I knew reading was going to do it for her. That was going to be something that she could truly, truly cherish for a lifetime.
Oh, Kathy, I love it. Thank you. I want to write a book now. Who writes poetry about brick and block laying, carpentry, plumbing, heavy machinery operation? John Hagee does in his book, A Pocket Full of Poems.
Oh, about opinions, points of view, things I've done. I've written them mostly to entertain people. I've also got a series of books coming out by this time next year. I hope to have 32 books out.
Wow. How many poems are in this book?
There's 201 in the first one. Let's see, I've got stories about personal experiences, opinions, trades and skills I've learned. I've got a couple of song lyrics thrown in there. It's like a hybrid of everything you can think of.
Have you been writing poetry your whole life?
No, I just did that for 18 months before I submitted it to eight Pocket Full of Poems. Before, and I had a cookbook that disappeared and went through 14 people finally. They didn't know what happened to it. I had a joke book that was pretty funny, and that disappeared.
What do you mean they disappeared? Where did they go?
I don't know. I tried tracing it through various people, and they just, last one, they don't know what happened to it.
What you gave them away?
No, I just wanted them to look at it, and they were really happy. Went from person to person to person to person, and I lost track of them.
Hopefully you can hang on to this one now that it's published, right?
Right.
Do you have a poem you can share with me, a short one?
Okay, hang on a minute. I've got a copy of Pocket Full of Poems in the other room. I'm going to go get it. That's a good thing about these cell phones. You can always carry them around.
I know, right?
Yeah. I've got one made to be a song, and it's called, it says, I Just Got to Ask. It says, it goes like this. I just got to ask, I just got to know. I got to ask, I just got to know. Is she the right one, or should I let her go? Will she feed me steak or force me to eat crow? These feelings of love for her, or should I let them go before I let them grow and flow? I've got to ask, I just got to know. Does she love me or just my dough? I have strong feelings for her, but she never lets hers show. Is she a source of love and life, or just of endless woe? I've got to ask, I've got to know.
Okay. It sounds like it could be a song. Now, do you have a poem about like bricklaying, block laying, machinery, heavy equipment? Like, are there poems about that?
Sure.
Can you share one of those? Because that's pretty interesting. Welding, carpentry, plumbing, short order cooking.
Oh, yeah. I've got, oh, here's one, the handyman. I was a handyman once. He's a man who can build, fix, and sand. He can paint, spray, and sand. He takes metal, brick, steel, and wood. He builds them a solid, grand, and good. He works both in the community suburbs and in the hoods. The handyman, he fixes porches, roofs, and your veranda. The handyman is a winning plan. He fixes things as fast as you can say Shazam. That's the handyman.
Nice.
I wrote them basically for people's entertainment, and I've got a copy of it here. And from time to time, I like to look at them. If you're interested in trades, here's one: welders. I was a welder once, learned how in the Navy. This is the story of Welders Field. They weld copper, aluminum, cast iron, and steel. Even if they haven't welded for years, they get their fist back or their welder's feel. He welds either silver stick or MIG weld, whatever the deal. MIG or Huey arc is controlled by gas amperage and the speed of material coming off the wheel. Nets him money enough for his house, gas, or meal. his welding rods have fluxus material, usually out of a can, or stored on his side on a leather welder's creel. He stitches up and down the metal that he joins and seals. As he does this, metal pops, buzzes, and squeals.
And you got 32 more books coming.
Yes, by this time next year, I'll have 32 more books coming out.
All right, John, we're looking forward to that. Cassandra Sajor works at a California bank, but writing is her passion. She's kept her writings from as far back as grade school and decided it was time to polish some of them up and publish them for her book, Words No One Taught Me.
I published it because I've always known that I wanted to be a writer. And I tried like other career paths, but writing has always been like the thing that I come back to. And I had all these pieces that I had worked on. And so I thought putting out some of the pieces that I had written would be a good way to like introduce myself as a writer. So it's not necessarily my life story. It's a collection of poems about love and loss and finding yourself that I myself can relate to, but it's also, I feel it's relatable to just anybody. It's not necessarily specific to my life. There is, I think, something unique. So my poetry book doesn't have any pictures in it. It's just words. So I think the layout and the words itself is what's unique about it. I think it's the writing. I think the poetry speaks for itself, where I didn't want to drown out what I was saying by adding pictures or illustrations to it. I think the opening piece for me is it sets the tone for just about everything that I am trying to communicate in this book.
I mean, the title is Words No One Taught Me.
Right.
What does that mean?
It means that no one taught me these words. Like I learned these words on my own. Nobody showed me how to write poetry. It's just something that it just came to me.
All right, so do you have a poem for me?
I do. This one is untitled. If I could fall into a time warp and be 16 again, I would be a dorky girl, a broken-hearted girl who got her heart broken long before any dumb boy ever had the chance to. A girl with a head full of hair, a dreamer, dreaming for the world, caged, trying to break free from nothing, from everything. A lover falling in love with no one yet everyone. A hopeless romantic longing for a timeless love. I'd rewrite my stories but erase all the tears. To myself, I would stay true, and I would know better than to fall in love with you. Not you, who I longed for, but you, who made me feel like I could never be enough.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Thank you. I've done a couple poetry readings out here in California through social media. So I had a couple places reach out to me about coming to their poetry nights and doing like a poetry reading from my book.
How did they hear about you?
Through social media. So I self-published this book about 2 years ago, and then I myself kind of built a little buzz around it on social media, and then with Page Publishing, they published the second edition. So this is actually a second edition.
So when you say you created a buzz on social media, how did you do that? Because people seem to really be confused on how to do that.
Advertising. So you advertise it yourself, and then also you can pay Instagram to advertise for you. So doing advertising on Instagram and on Facebook as well.
And you think that really works?
I do. I think if you have the time and the energy to put into it, it does work. You can't just write and then just wait on it to be read. You have to go out there and you have to allow people to hear you and know what you do. I do have another poetry book that I have been working on.
So there's more to come.
Of course, this is just an introduction.
All right, Cassandra, thank you. When Darlene Rudakowski retired from California's Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, she decided to embark on a 32,000-mile cross-country trip and then write a book entitled My 32,000-Mile Cross-Country Trip.
I was an administrator over 3 counties, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Marin. And I knew that I should retire at 65 because our family only has longevity to like 80, 81. and I worked a lot and I wanted to enjoy life. So I knew if I didn't do something dramatic, and so I thought I can't just go away for 2 weeks or a month. I had to do something major. And one of my goals was always to visit every state in the United States. And I had done maybe half of them. I thought it would take me 6 months, but it took me 5.5 months. So I knew after 6 months, I would be completely divorced from work. And that's what I had to do because I liked my job and it was not easy to retire also. Started out in California and I took the southern route to the east side of the United States. Then I would plan my trip back west taking the northern route. But I really tried not to be on major highways. I was born and raised in a small town and I just enjoyed all these small towns, and every state has so much beauty. And there were only 3 times that I was really afraid. And one of them was when I was in a coal mine in West Virginia. I just thought, oh my gosh, if something happens to me, the only evidence is my Jeep outside. And then the other time was in Utah. I thought I would take a shortcut to the National Bridge Monument. So I started driving and I'm coming to a mountain. And usually, when you come to a mountain, you're either going to the right or the left, or you're going through it. Well, the only road turned into a dirt road going up. And it was like it was only room for one car. And I got afraid, but I really couldn't turn around. So I thought I'll just sit there and wait. And finally, a man in a pickup came along. He said there would be a little spot not far. I could turn around. So then I learned from that not to take any shortcuts. And then the third time was in Big Rapids in South Dakota. And it was around the time of that Sturgis motorcycle festival.
I've been there during Sturgis. It's insane.
Well, I was right ahead of it. And I wanted to get out before, but going in, the rain started coming. And it was not rain, it was sleet. They were like 2 by 4 inches. It was so windy. And, I just feel like I never took the trip alone, that Jesus was always with me. And so, wouldn't you know, not far, all the cars were pulling off into this turnout. And I could see some of the cars ahead of me were small cars. And I thought, if we're going to fly away, it's going to be the small cars first because I had a Jeep and it was heavy. Then when I got to the hotel, I told them, what I went through. And they said, you know what? This happens every year around the Sturgis Festival. We think it's a sign that maybe we shouldn't have it, but we don't care. We just have it anyway.
So you share all of these experiences in your book, and I guess are you encouraging people to do it?
Well, the people that enjoy my book are people like me who are adventurous and they just love to drive around and travel. But I have never met one woman yet who said she could do something like this. And it was a little sad because we can.
Yes, I sure hope we can. Thank you, Darlene. Finally, Pamela Ward is a sales manager, but her passion is poetry, and hence her book, A Taste of Life, a book of poems.
Some of them from my life's experience from when I was a little girl. I always enjoyed watching life as it goes by, and I was always taking notes. I would have somebody come up to me and they maybe needed help to convey how they feel to somebody because they just don't have words. And I found I had that gift. So I've taken it and I enjoyed it. And I slowly start building up my all my poems. And I decided, I says, everybody loves them. And every year, even at Christmas time, if they don't get a Christmas card from me with one of my brand new poems in there, they actually hurt. And I've been doing it in this company now 21 years. And I just did the first year as a saying thank you. Here's my gift to you is my poetry. Well, it got to be every year, please, every year's please. So I've been doing it every year, a brand new poem at Christmas time for my company. and get enough friends and families. Kind of grew. So I start putting everything together and start hunting for a publisher. And as you know, there are publishers out there, they only want to line their pockets, and there are some that actually want to help you. And I found one of those through Page Publishing.
Do you have a favorite poem you could read to me?
Sure can. All right, this poem is called 20. 20 years, how can that be? It shows so much life of a mystery. Before you know it, time has flown, but you're not the one that only knows. 20 years, how can that be? You're much too young for this to be. You run about without life's cares and told us, for all of us, don't be so square. 20 years, now how can that be? You sung to us and danced with glee. 20 years of hard-working days. You showed us how as you lead the way. 20 years, now that it's done, time to show for the rest of your life has just begun. That was basically when I watched our guys come home from either Vietnam or any type of war. They needed something to relax with, and they're going so many different directions. And it was just some way of saying, you've done it, you're there, you've come home, now live your life.
Easier said than done, right?
Yes. What I've done is I've done a couple of book signings where I've read, similar to being like an open mic, but it's to an audience kind of spread out where they would talk and decide on what they were looking for. I'm working with different schools and stuff where I'm actually going to be going to the schools. I'm going to be sharing my work and helping the students do what they need to do poetry, to try to open up more doors in their minds to it. I'm also looking to work with my local library to have a readathon where they can bring books or anything else of different types of poetry, and we go over the different genres that they have and help them to realize poetry can be fun. And then you can do a lot of nice things with it.
That's great, Pamela. Thank you so much. We got to get out of here. This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Download the podcast at 710WOR.com. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.